Welcome to Pop Up to Powerhouse, the podcast where side hustles turn pro. Here, we're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to build a standout, profitable brand in the event industry. From pricing with confidence to landing luxury clients, I'm sharing the wins, the setbacks, and everything in between, so you can turn your passion into a powerhouse business. Welcome to the very first episode of Pop Up to Powerhouse. Well, this wasn't the original episode 1 that I had planned to launch. You see, I had everything scripted. We had it recorded. It was very first episode energy and energetic. I recorded it and began the process to launch this podcast this past November. And then life completely shifted for me. I got a call that my dad had collapsed and was in the ICU. And so I dropped everything and flew to be by his bedside along with my family. He fought really hard for 19 days, but ultimately ended up passing away. I did take some time I took time to grieve. And for a minute, very, very short minute, during this process and during this time as I was processing everything that had happened, I was thinking about this podcast, and it felt weird to just start it like how life was before all of that happened, because I felt like I've changed during this, and it just felt not right to move forward. And I learned so many lessons during that time that I thought it made sense to share that story with you guys as my first episode. So instead of coming on here and pretending like the last few months didn't happen, I want to talk about what did happen, because that whole process changed me, and it's changed how I look at business. I was gone for 19 days. My family, I am out of Seattle, Washington, and my family lives in Arizona. And so I had flown to be there on November 1st and was there for 19 days. 19 full days of not being here and doing installations. And the wild part about all of that was that business went on as usual. Clients continued to get served. We continued to do installations. Orders were shipped and problems were solved without me. I've actually never been so grateful for the business that I built until then. This episode isn't about grief. It's about leadership. It's about what happens when life forces you to step away. It's about delegation, it's about identity, and it's about ambition. It was about learning that sometimes strength isn't about pushing harder, but sometimes letting go. So let's talk about fear, because there was a lot of that running while all this was going on. Fear with my dad, fear with work and what was going to go on, how all of that was going to work with me not being there for 19 days or being here. Considered the most primal and intense emotion, fear can act as a driver for both panic and courage. Fear pops up in just about every interaction and situation that we're in. For me, I feared that things would fall through the cracks, that emails wouldn't get answered from clients. I feared that I could mentally handle the workload or any workload that was actually even coming in to even help my team. We were in Q4, which is the busiest time of the year. And I feared a little bit, there wasn't as much on this, but I did fear whether or not revenue would drop. So let's talk about what actually happened. My team and friends and my vendor community stepped up in major ways and were there to support me. Clients gave me grace on my response times, knowing that that was happening. And I didn't feel pressured to be able to get things done. Luckily, I had a project management system and systems in place that my team was able to manage a majority of that without me having to really be there or step in. I was on minimally, and I was able to see what was happening or what wasn't happening. And I didn't have to spend a lot of energy focusing on that or being really hands-on. And so I was able to really step away and be with my dad a majority of the time. What I ended up realizing was that I wasn't as needed as I thought I was. And that was, that's the goal out of all of this, right? Is that when you build a business, not everything has to fall on you. At least that was my goal when I started mine, was that I didn't want to be the one that had to answer all the questions, be the one that had to do all of the things. And so that's when everything shifted for me. Grief has a way of reprioritizing what's actually important. Suddenly things that felt urgent weren't. The petty business stress fell to the wayside, and that continues to this day. And success feels a little bit different to me, or at least what I thought was success. I still care about growth, and I still care about doing a really good job, but I don't really feel like I care about proving myself the way that I used to, or about being perfect. I feel like when I recorded the first few episodes of this podcast, it was all about being very polished and put together. And all of that has kind of gone to the wayside, because it's just the small things that you worry about that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. I realized that I was putting way too much weight of who I was and my success on how well my business did. I was way too attached to that. And while I love what I do, and I still get very excited about my business and the installations, I realize that what I love even more is spending time with my family. And that since starting my business, I've poured a lot of myself into my business, and spending time with family and friends, to me, it feels just so much more important right now. There are seasons where you drive and you push. There are seasons where you build. There are seasons where you scale. And sometimes life throws you into neutral. And for the first time, I feel okay with that. I don't feel like it's weakness. It feels more like maturity. So what I took away from this experience was, one, build for absence. My business is anything but perfect. But when I started this 9 years ago, I always knew that I was going to want employees. And so I always approached my business, even when it was just me, as if I had employees, and I put systems into place, and I had project management databases, so that we could really track and organize things. And that's helped me with having employees, but it majorly helped me when all of this happened, because I could see what was happening and what was being done without actually having to communicate with my team. And that was really nice. My consistency on showing up over the last 9 years, whether it was online or at events and networking, really paid off, because even though I stepped away for a little while, or I wasn't posting as much, or I wasn't in person at events, revenue still continued to come in and requests still came in, because of that consistency that I had built over the years, and the relationships that I had built with a lot of the people that I continue to work with today. The relationships and my community showed up in a big way. I feel like I've really tried to build or attract clients and vendors that like working with me and like the work that I produce. And because I've attracted those types of people, I didn't have to worry about them going and hiring somebody else. If anything, they gave me more grace during this time, and that was reassuring and a blessing. So lesson number 2 would be delegate before you're forced to. If I can give you any advice, don't wait for a crisis to test your leadership. So ask yourself, what am I holding on to, or what am I controlling that I can let go of? And what am I afraid to release? Maybe there's something that you don't want to do anymore. And for me, in terms of control, I have a really hard time letting go of the design side of things. And so I definitely have set up a system where it's like, I have trained my employees and people that have worked for me. I still design, but they execute. And so a lot of times they'll ask themselves, what would Jamie do? I think that's WWJD. And so they're not always going to do it exactly how I want, and I'm learning to let go of that, but using those moments as a training experience and coming back and retraining them, it has allowed me to step away. And lesson number 3, stop confusing busyness with value. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. At some point, in order to step away or to scale, there are going to be tasks that you're going to have to give up. Identify what you hate doing and hire for it. Lesson number 4, you're allowed to pivot. You don't have to stay loyal to a version of you that no longer fits. Changing direction isn't weakness, it's alignment. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I have had a note in my phone since 2023 that said, start a podcast and an online course. 2023, you guys, that I've been sitting on this idea and not moving forward. To be honest with you, I have been afraid. What would I even say? Would anybody even want to listen to me? What could I even teach people? So many fears that really kind of came up when thinking about wanting to do this or what it would actually end up looking like. And honestly, starting this project over this last year, during the whole process, it did feel uncomfortable, but I was kind of pushing myself forward. But that's what it felt like. I really felt like I was pushing myself, right? Because that's what high achievers do. You get uncomfortable, you push forward, you make yourself do it anyways. But sometimes you feel like a resistance. And sometimes I feel like you can't force timing. And so what's really crazy is that throughout this entire process, I've kind of felt that way. And then when everything happened with my dad, I paused and I just reflected. I even questioned whether or not I wanted to do this podcast and whether I just continue to run my business the way that I have been running it. But oddly, with everything that has happened, I feel more internally ready for this next chapter. And I don't know why, but that feels it just feels weird that I'm not feeling this resistance as much as I'm feeling ready. And sometimes you just have to trust the timing and maybe not pushing. And because if you're feeling that resistance, it's like sometimes you never feel like you're doing enough. And I feel like what I've learned is everything will happen in the right timing and the way that it's supposed to. And that's kind of how this all feels like it's happening for me. And I feel like I'm actually coming from a much better place than I was prior to starting this whole project. Quick timeout. If you've been nodding along during this episode, then you are the type of person that we love having in our community. The best way to stay connected is by joining our email list. It's where we get to share a little bit more of behind-the-scenes magic, stories that I don't always get to share on the podcast, early access to special announcements, and ways to be part of the conversation with other listeners who care about the same things as you do. We'd love for you to be a part of it, so just head to thejamietaylor.com/email and drop your email in. No spam, just real connections and good stuff. So what exactly is Pop-Up to Powerhouse? I can tell you that it's not just going to be about building a balloon business. It's going to be about building a business that elevates your life. It doesn't consume it. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about leadership, mindset, systems, scaling, delegating, marketing, and becoming the kind of founder who can step away by choice or by circumstances and knowing that everything is going to be solid. Because growth isn't just about revenue. It's about resiliency, maturity, and clarity. And if the last few months have taught me anything, it's that we don't control when life shifts gears, but we do control how we build it and where we want it to go. So if you're in a season of acceleration, I'm here for you. If you're in a season of pause, I'm here for you. And if you're in a season of reset, I am especially here for you. So let's build a business that's strong enough to hold us and lives that are strong enough to matter. That's what Pop-Up to Powerhouse is all about. And inside Luxury Balloon Academy, LBA, that's exactly what we'll be building. Not just skills, but strong, sustainable businesses. More to come on all of that soon. For now, make sure to tune into episode 2, where I dive a little bit more into me and my journey of how I went from Pop-Up to Powerhouse. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you liked and subscribed and also left us a comment. See you next time. Now, a quick ask. I want to keep bringing you these free educational podcasts so that you can build the event business that you want. You can make that possible by simply sharing this episode with your friend, following us on your favorite platform, and leaving us a review. It takes just a moment, and it makes sure that I can keep bringing you the best quality content so that you can go from pop-up to powerhouse.